morning, everybody. Did you know that nematodes are the most abundant creature on Earth? They're even more abundant than insects, even though people don't agree, but it's really like that. And for them, size does not matter. The largest nematode that you can get is 8 meters long and 2.5 centimeters thick, and they are in the placenta of the sperm whale. Now, the smallest ones, if you take out a 10-cent piece and you look at the thickness of that 10-cent piece, the smallest ones are so small that you can fit 20 to 30 of them. If you fit them head to tail on the thickness of that 10-cent piece, you can fit 20 to 30 of them on the thickness of that 20-cent piece. And that's actually the nematodes that we are interested in today. There's quite a lot of nematodes on groundnuts, quite a lot of species, but there's 3 that I'm going to discuss with you today, and those are the most important nematodes. And you will probably, as a groundnut producer or as an industry, will come across them quite definitely. And you will, if you come across them, you will definitely speak to me about them. The first one that I want to discuss with you is the root knot nematode. Now, the root knot nematode, the reason why I chose the root knot nematode is because they have such a wide host range, and that means that they will literally parasitize everything that you will plant with the groundnuts. The only thing that they don't parasitize is apples, and that's the only thing. They even parasitize weeds. And the other reason why I chose this one is because the producers always laugh about it, and they always tell me, yes, that's exactly what's going on in real life as well. It's the woman that makes the problems, not the men. The reason for this is it's only the girls that can feed. The men cannot feed. But here's something for the women around here. These girls do not need the men at all. They don't even need them for production. So it goes both ways. The men can laugh at us and say, yeah, you always make the trouble, but we can laugh at them and tell them, but this girl does not need any men. And this is the reason why I want to talk to the producers about this one as well. Remember, just like our human females, we can take everything away, your car, your money, everything. And by the time we do that, it is too late for you to realize it. You won't even realize it. And it's the same with this one. By the time you realize that you've got a problem with this nematode, it's too late already because you're in the withholding period of the nematicides that you need to use for her. What's the first sign that you might have a little bit of a problem with this little female? The first thing that you will see is that in a field, and this is not only for groundnut, it's for other crops as well, what you will see is that you will get patches of plants that will, it looks as if they're yellowing, and sometimes it seems as if they wilt even if there is enough water. Now, sometimes you can, it can look like nutritional dependencies of that plant's waterlogging, stuff like that. But one thing where you can say that it might be nematodes that's giving this type of symptoms is because it's always in patches. The reason for this is because a nematode population will always be in patches in a field. It will not be spread evenly, ever. If it rains, all the eggs and all the females and all the little larvae will wash into hollows. And that's why you will always see it in patches. Now let's see what it looks like. Because they are so small, like in that 10-cent piece, I will use a lot of pictures just to show you and to give you an idea what's going on in my little world. There's the female, there she is. There's the egg sac, and in this egg sac you can get up to 1,000 eggs of this nematode. And there's the some of the cells of the root. But if you take this and you cut through it, and you go to the electron microscope, this is enlarged many times. And this is what I want to show you. Here's the nematode, the female. There's some cells of the root. There's the egg sac. But look at what's going on here. Now, what happens here is that this female can't move around. If she hatches from the egg, she will go into the plant, and then she will settle at a place in the plant. And now, because she can't move around, she can't destroy the cells on which she is feeding. So she has to make a different plan. And what she does is, in her saliva, there's some enzymes, and these enzymes will tell the cells, and it's a normal cell of a plant that became so enlarged. She'll tell this cell, listen, you're mine now, you're nothing of the plant now, and you will make food for me for the rest of my life. And that's where that enlarged cells are coming through, and that's what you are seeing when you're looking at the plant that's infested with root knot nematodes. You will see there's galls on this root. Now this is incidentally from phthalates, some groundnuts that I had from phthalates. You will see those galls, and that is what happens when those cells start to enlarge. And basically what you're seeing is you are seeing the kitchen of the root knot nematode female. So remember, if you see those galls, it's the kitchen of the root knot nematode female. Now, how can you distinguish between that galls? Because you can get confused between the galls and the nitrogen-fixing nodules. Now, there's an easy way. What you can do is you can open it up. It will be green or red on the inside if it's a nitrogen-fixing nodule, but if it's a gall, it will look dead inside. But now there's a catch-22 with this nematodes as well. Later on in the season, these nitrogen-fixing nodules will die off, and they will also look like they're rotten inside. So, a fail-proof way to distinguish between the galls and between the nitrogen-fixing nodule is when you rub it. Rub it lightly. If you can rub this off, it is a nitrogen-fixing nodule because it's on the root itself. It will just leave a little lesion, but not really something to worry about. But if you try to take off the gall, there's no way that you're going to do that without destroying the whole root. Remember, I told you it's cells of the plant itself that this nematode forms into galls. So if you can take it off easily, it's a nitrogen-fixing nodule. If you can't, it will be a gall of the root knots. Now, that same farmer where I got this groundnut asked me, what does it do to the nitrogen-fixing nodules? And this is the answer that I gave him. I've opened up the nitrogen-fixing nodule, and there you can see them. They're sitting in there. So they are affecting the nitrogen-fixing nodules as well. Aflatoxin, that's a swear word for all the groundnut producers. These females definitely have interaction with the fungus that produces aflatoxin. So if you have them, the chances are very good that there's going to be aflatoxins as well. Now from here on, all the research done from here on was funded by the ARC and by OAC. And this is also one of my babies. Doc Jan will remember this is one of my babies, and this is what I started on. This is the pot nematode, also a swear word for the groundnut producers. Now remember I showed you that the symptoms of a nematode will likely be patches of plants in a field that will be yellowish. Now I want to ask you something. How does this peanuts look? Not too bad, is it? It looks nice. This peanuts, each and every one of them was inoculated with 7,000 pot nematodes at planting. And they look like this. So in other words, you will not know that there's some nematode infestation, pot nematode infestation in your fields. The first time that you will realize, oh, I've got a problem, is when you start to lift the crop. What happens there is that when you lift it, the pot starts breaking off and it will remain behind in the soil. Why? Because the nematode will enter at the connection point of the peg to the pot. It will enter there and it will go into the pot. And because it enters there, it damages the cells around this entry point. And that's why it weakens the cells, and the pots will then break off. and remain behind in the soil. And a farmer can lose up to 60%, 40 to 60% of his yield in such a way. It depends on how high the infestation rate is in his field. And the first symptoms that you will see, and I'm sure some of the producers will see this, or will know, oh, I saw that. If it breaks off, at the connection point, you will see it's a brownish type of necrotic symptom that you will see in that connection point. Now, what happens is when they enter there, they start to feed all over in the pot. So it will, the damage that they do will make the pot more, the water will come into the pot. And that's why the kernels will start to germinate even before you guys can harvest. Some of the other symptoms that you can see, it germinates before you harvest and the kernel starts to discolor. Now, the reason why they germinate before you can harvest is because they also feed on the testa of the kernel. And in the testa, there are some chemicals that will inhibit the kernel to start to germinate. And because they feed on it, it starts to leach. And that's why it starts to germinate even before you can harvest. Now, if you... I'm sure some of you have already seen it. If you're in a field that's heavily infested with pot nematodes and you start to harvest and you walk around in the field, you'll see all over, you'll see the seedlings. And that's one of the telltale signs that there's some pot nematode infestation. Now this just a little bit tongue in the cheek. It's a seed-borne parasite. In other words, you'll find it in the seed. So wherever you're going to plant that infested seed, you will take the pot nematode with you to that field. If you look carefully, there is a little threads. That's the nematodes. They do not enter the seed, but they stay. It's got two parts like this, and they will be in the middle. They will live in the middle, and they will feed on the testa as well, and also on the embryo. Now, the tongue-in-the-cheek part is, and you'll see later, it's very difficult to control them. I want to tell you today, because it's so difficult to control them, it's almost all the groundnuts that we have in South Africa that's infested with this nematode in a lesser or more degree. And all of you that have eaten raw peanuts, or even baked peanuts, it doesn't matter, all of us in this room that's eaten peanuts has eaten this nematode as well. Okay. I'm the bearer of bad news, what can I say? But don't worry about it. If you eat steak, the cow eats plants, and this thing eats plants. So you're eating steak, only in a very, very, very small piece of steak that you're eating. Okay, the economical implications of this nematode is, of course, that's the worrisome part. It's not just that the pots will stay behind in the soil when you lift the crop. The main effect that this nematode have on the groundnut is it's the quality of the nut. Now, all of us know that's in the groundnut industry, all of us know that the higher the percentage UBS, the lower the grading, and then, of course, the lower the income. And this nematode, unfortunately, because it's on the testa and everything, it discolors the whole thing, and you can sometimes see some of the veins and some of the, where they start to germinate. So it increases the percentage UBS in a consignment. And that causes, of course, that it has a lower income. Now, you can think for yourself, this I got from Lorraine. So this is what I got from Lorraine. Currently, choice 1 is 17,000 Rand per ton. Now, sometimes if you get enough of this nematode on it, can be downgraded to crushing grade. And look at the difference. Between 17,000 Rand per ton and 2,000 Rand per ton, it's 15,000 Rand per ton that this thing can damage the nematodes with. So it's quite a bit. Aflatoxin, we don't know at this stage, really. But I think personally that it can have an effect on the aflatoxin as well, because remember this one, instead of the root knot nematode that can only go into the shell of the pot, this thing can move into the peanut itself. So the chances are very good that they are associated with the fungus that can produce the aflatoxin as well. Control of this nematode, now there's the bearer of bad news. Chemical, it's difficult to control them chemically because where the root knot nematode, for instance, are there at the beginning of the season, this one starts to proliferate at pegging of the plants, and that falls within the withholding period. So you can't use chemicals anymore. And its life cycle is 7 days. In other words, from egg until she can lay new eggs, it's just 7 days. So you can think for yourself, there's a lot of generations in a single season, and they start, when the plant starts to peg, it starts to proliferate. And then it starts to get more and more and more. Every 7 days, there's a new one. Biological, there's some good biological products on the market, but for this nematode specifically, it's a bit difficult because they go into the seed and they will then take whatever they have into the seed itself. So biological is not a very good idea really for this. It does not really work. Crop rotation, and now I'm going to contrasteer myself. Yes. Crop rotation is one of the most important things that you can do as a producer, because you will bring down diseases and you will bring down insects, even insects. And some of the crops are good for a follow-up crop. But for nematodes, crop rotation does not work. Why? Because the nematodes, and this one specifically also, can survive on any crop that you will use with a groundnut. So they will survive in small numbers on anything, on maize, on anything that you will plant with the groundnut. And in the end, even if there is only a small number of pot nematodes present at the beginning of the season, because the life cycle is so short and because they start to proliferate, 90% of the eggs will hatch and they will be viable, there will still be damage at the end of the season, even if you use crop rotation. Resistance, at this stage, there's no resistant cultivar on the market. That's the only thing that we can still use to keep this nematode under control, but there's no resistant cultivars on the market, and that's where me and Solly comes in. We already identified a source of resistance. Both of them has been infested with 7,000 nematodes at the start, at planting. And look, here you can see it. It looks quite clean here. So we've already identified the resistance, and now the task starts that we have to try and breed for a resistant cultivar. So there's some light in the tunnel yet. Now look at this. Isn't this awesome? I think it's awesome. This is a new nematode that we found. Look at its face. Here you can see that's where the stylet are, where it goes into the cell, and there's some of its sensory organs as well. And now I can identify the producers, because they're looking at me like I'm all shades of crazy, and I know maybe I'm a little bit. But I did not put this picture in just to show you how awesome they do look under a microscope. And by the way, it's increased 60,000 times. But anyway, I did not put this picture here to show you how awesome they look. Look at this. Do you see this? That is bacteria. So this means that this nematode can move bacteria and all those baddies in the soil around and go into the plant with it. That's one of the reasons that we are a bit worried. Now, this picture was taken in 2016, I think it's in 2016, Lorraine brought us, it was actually for a photo for a book. So it was by accident that we saw this. She brought us some damaged plants, and we found this nematode inside, and it was something new. We did not see them in South Africa as yet. And where I showed you this bacteria cells, look at this. This nematode was actually associated with these fungi. There you can see the fungi, there's a nematode, and there's some fungi. Thivaliopsis pasicola, Neocosmospora was, in fact, don't ask me the Afrikaans or the English names, I do not know. But it was associated with them at that stage when we found them. Now, like the pot nematode, it's also a problem because there's no above ground symptoms, like you can see here. 8,000. And there was 40,000. I'm gonna talk about these plants a bit later on, where I needed my habit to help me, but I'll show you a bit later on what we did here. Also, no above ground symptoms, just like the pot nematode. When you look below ground on the pots, it seems like a soot. It's like a soot-like a substance that's on the pots. You can see here the black pot. And the bad news is that it also starts to germinate premature, and it also discolored the seeds. So it's a problem. It's just like the pot nematode as well. There's the control where no nematodes were in, and this control had the nematodes in where you can see where it starts to germinate as well. Now, the reason why I'm personally a bit worried about this nematode, we do not know yet how far it's been spread. This is from phalates. As of now, it's still in phalates, but we do not know if it's spread already. I am looking at it. But the reason why I'm worried now, a pot nematode at the end of the season, where it's the most abundant of the whole season, at the end of the season, you will find 90% of a pot nematode population inside the pots. No? So in other words, you will see here actually larger numbers. But look at this. I've started to compare this nematode against the pot nematode, and look here. Here you can see there's the new nematode, Robustodurus arachidus. We still don't have a name for him, and I'm sure the producers can think of a name for him. So go ahead and let me know if you can think of a name for him. This one here you can see, this is a soil, this is the roots, this is a pot. Now the pot nematode, most of the population will occur in the pots. Little bit in the roots and almost none in the soil. But in this, we saw that the new nematode were actually more in the pots, and here the pot nematodes were more in the roots. 56, for instance, against 280, and here in the pots 1,778 instead of 98. And this means that this nematode is actually more aggressive. It seems that this nematode is more aggressive, and it can bully the pot nematode out of the pots and go into the pots themselves. And that is why we are a bit worried about this nematode, but we are busy looking at it further, look at the spread of it, and from there on we can decide how to control it. Another thing of this, also a bit of bad news, the nematicides that's currently on the market does not work for this nematode. So it's more or less the same than the pot nematodes, but we are on it, me and Solly. We are already looking at stuff like that, so it's something that we're looking at. Now, what we also looked at is to see, will they be able to survive the colder months? The answer is yes. This is also electron microscope photo, magnified 500 times, and there you can see then what happens here is this nematode loses most of the water in its body, and it will curl up like this. And in this stage, and this you can remember, at this stage, the metabolism is so low that you can't measure it. And in this stage, nothing will help for it as well, because they can't take up any nematicides. That's just beside the point, but that's something that you can see. And they do survive like this for the whole winter. How do we know that? This project started at lockdown, or let me put it like this. The first trials that we harvested was in lockdown. So what happened there is we had to stay at home. At least we had some permits to go out. We needed to stay at home. So I took the harvest home, and I asked my husband to just do something so that I can hang it so it can dry out, so it doesn't rot, because I need those nematodes for a next trial. And what he did is that he hanged it there. Now the point is, during this time, it was freezing cold in Potch, like in freezing. We had a lot of temperatures, or a lot of days that were below freezing point. And this happened, I think in May, if I'm not mistaken, Gary, we did it in May. And I took it down after something like 6 or 7 weeks, and I used that to inoculate those plants that I showed you. I showed you those little plants that I showed you, remember them? These plants? I extracted those nematodes and inoculated these plants with them during November, and I got this. So it does survive, unfortunately for us. But we're on it, like I said, we're on it, so hopefully next time when I talk to you guys, I can actually give you some better news. This is my number, my email. If ever you do have problems with nematodes or whatever, if you want to ask some questions or you want some more information, or we do have an analytical lab as well that we can do some analysis, you are welcome to phone me or to talk to me. And even if you do hear something funny going around, if you do hear something like someone telling you, listen, this is going to work for nematodes, and you think, this guy is not really talking the truth, then you can phone me. We do know more or less what's going on in the outside, and we will be able to tell you if it's something that it will not happen. And thank you. That's my story.